All right, we're going to go right into our next panel. Thank you for Arm for hosting us today. It's been great to see colleagues and friends in the cell and gene therapy community. My name is Anshul Mangal. I'm the president of Precision Advance and Project Farma. It's my pleasure to moderate this discussion today. The topic that we're going to be talking about is very near and dear to my organization at Precision and Project Farma. Since 2013, we have been providing solutions to many of you here in the audience today to help transform patient lives. Having been a partner to over 100 advanced therapy organizations, we know that delivering a cell and gene therapy to the market requires a comprehensive and integrated approach. Therefore, Precision was created to uniquely focus on the complexities of clinical, regulatory, manufacturing, commercial needs to successfully bring an advanced therapy to market. In our panel today, we're going to be hearing from various experts on these complexities. They will give us an update on their respective companies, share their expectations for 2023, and share what they're most excited about. We'll also hear about current challenges and predictions for the industry. So I'll briefly introduce the panelists now and then get right into the questions. So joining us today is Devyn Smith, CEO of Arbor, Kim Nguyen, CTO of Affinity, Phil Sear, SVP at Precision Value and Health, Philip Toleikis, CEO of Cernova, and Robin Kenselaar, SVP and General Manager of Orchard Therapeutics. Thank you guys for joining us today. Devyn, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us more about Arbor's gene editing technology platform and the impact that it will have?
Yeah, thank you, Anshul. It's a pleasure to be here. And at Arbor, we are a next-generation gene editing company that's focused on building a toolbox of approaches for editing. And we do that through searching through the various metagenomic data that exist to identify novel, differentiated, characterized editing approaches. So we take a wide swath of looking at this from nucleases all the way to other novel editing approaches. That allows us to utilize this toolbox to develop therapies for patients. And we focus on in vivo therapeutics, primarily for liver and CNS, while we partner with folks on the ex vivo side of the house. And we do feel the opportunity space is immense in gene editing, and there are a tremendous number of genetic diseases. That means we also have to have a wide swath of tools to be able to treat these genetic diseases, because it's clear that it's not a one-size-fits-all space.
Thank you, Devyn. Kim, moving on to you. Affinity is pioneering cell therapies targeting oncogenic mutations. Can you tell us a little bit about your platform?
Yeah, certainly, Anshul, and also thrilled to be on this panel, and thank you for the invitation. So Affinity Therapeutics, we are a TCR T-cell company that is working on autologous cell therapies for solid tumor indications, such as colorectal cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, as well as pancreatic cancers. So we're a fully integrated company where we do TCR discovery research in-house. So we discover TCRs against oncogenic driver mutations, such as KRAS family of mutations, namely KRAS G12V and KRAS G12D mutations. As many of you know, there's been some success recently in the field with small molecule inhibitors against KRASs such as G12C, with approval of Lumakras, as well as Krazati. And we think, however, due to difficulties with chemistries and small molecules able to react against G12V and G12D epitopes, we feel that TCRs are the strongest platform to be able to potentially address these very intractable cancers. So we're bringing forward a full pipeline of oncogenic driver mutations, including various KRAS subtypes, as well as P53 and PIK3CA oncogenic drivers. In addition, we also use all the tools available to us now in terms of synthetic biology and cell engineering, and we also do gene modification and gene editing of our TCR cell therapies, including knockout of the TRAC locus and TRBC loci using type 5 CRISPR-Cas, as well as armoring of our TCR T cells using various synthetic switch receptors as well. And we're preclinical right now, but moving rapidly into the clinic with 2 INDs in the second half of this year.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks,
Phil, would love to get some insight on Precision from you and how Precision's helping bring cell and gene therapies to market?
Yeah, absolutely. As Anshul mentioned, Precision has many verticals across the research development lifespan and also commercialization lifespan. About 2 or 3 years ago, our founders decided that they wanted to really put a large focus on cell and gene therapy. And the idea from that was that they wanted to make sure that there was collaboration between different parts of our organization. So we developed a Precision Advance where individuals, subject matter experts, were brought together to be able to work collaboratively across the development cycle. And so, for example, the being able for individuals who are working on a manufacturing of a product to also consult with someone who is developing assays makes for a seamless transition into the manufacturing process, or someone who is designing a clinical trial to be able to consult with someone who's potentially developing a health economic model that would go to an HTA or a payer to allow that person who's developing the model to have input into the clinical trial design to make sure you're maximizing your chance of getting data that would be impactful to payers is really the impetus for Precision Advance.
Thanks, Phil. Philip, can you tell us more about information about Cernova's approach to regenerative medicine and how it's improving the quality of life for patients with chronic diseases?
Sure, thanks for the opportunity to be on the panel today. So Cernova is a cell therapeutics company, and we are a very, very disruptive company in terms of changing the way patients are being treated. We've been focusing on therapeutics where patients are missing a protein or hormone that is produced by a particular cell type. So our main therapeutic program is for type 1 diabetes, and our goal is essentially to find a functional cure for these patients by replacing the cells that have been lost. And the approach that we've been taking is first to de-risk our programs is to work with human donor cells, and our technology platform consists of a medical device that we place deep under the skin that forms an organ-like environment for placement of the therapeutic cells. So what we've done with our diabetes program is first work with human donor islets and be able to prove that we're able to keep those cells alive long-term in the device without having a fibrotic reaction, and then be able to produce insulin into the bloodstream. And we also are working on immune protection technologies to be able to protect those cells from immune attack. So to go through our process, we have shown in our phase 2 clinical trials that we're able to get insulin independence long-term in patients that have no ability to produce insulin in their bodies alone with our cell technologies. We then moved forward, and we know that with the donor cells, there's only a limited supply of patients that we can treat. So we went ahead and conducted a collaboration where we have worldwide exclusive rights to an iPSC technology that we have gained from Evotec, and we're now moving ahead with that technology into clinical trials in 2024. Our other 2 programs are working on a hemophilia A program, which is an ex vivo gene therapy program. Again, starting out with the patient's own cells that we're correcting. And the other program is with thyroid disease. And we're working with patients that have completely lost their thyroid gland to bring back the feedback loop that is occurring with thyroid.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. Last but not least, Robin, would love to hear more about Orchard and its lentivirus gene therapy platform.
Thank you, Anshul, and thank you for the opportunity to be at this panel. Yeah, at Orchard, our vision is to end the devastation caused by genetic and other severe diseases by tapping into the curative potential of hematopoietic stem cells, or HSC gene therapy. Our platform uses the patient's own cells, and these cells are responsible for lifelong production of blood cells, and we believe that this really allows us to uniquely target some of these diseases. First, because these cells have the capability to self-renew, leading to our belief in a durable effect of this therapy, potentially a lifelong effect. Secondly, these cells can differentiate in the different cells in the bloodstream, and they naturally migrate into the different tissues and organs, including the brain. So today, across our different programs, we have treated over 160 patients so far, with the longest follow-up of 10 years. We have a pipeline that crosses preclinical, clinical, and commercial stage products right now, and we're looking to develop that further. Starting with the small indications, we have launched actually in Europe with reimbursed access in a number of markets, but we're looking also to see if this platform could be used in larger indications going forward.
Thank you. So I think we've heard a lot about the great achievements that happened in the cell and gene therapy field in 2022, and all the great things ahead of us in 2023. These achievements wouldn't be possible without innovative new technologies, new trends that are happening in the industry every single day. So I want to briefly talk about some of these new trends and technologies. And Devyn, I want to start with you. What would you say are some of your top technologies that are poised to disrupt advanced medicines this year?
So I think if you think about where we are as a space, if I flash back, you go back like 10 years ago, and success was always a rolling 5 years in this space. I remember these meetings were much smaller, and we'd always kind of joke, yeah, 5 years we'll see a commercial product. You flash forward now, we've got multiple products in the cell therapy space, multiple products in gene therapy, as Robin mentioned, Orchard being a company that has that. And there are, we saw the submission for the first gene-edited program, ex vivo, from CRISPR and Vertex get submitted. So I think, and there are multiple additional programs being submitted for approvals this year. So you think about that is incredible to think that where we were a decade ago, where AV and CAR-T were sort of just emerging, to where we are today is fantastic. And I think, and gene editing as well was, that was just discovered a decade ago. And so I think you see the progress we've made as an industry, and I think you think about the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be absolutely amazing. I think there will be many, many products approved that are going to change patients' lives, and will be moving towards sort of a true one-and-done approach across many areas. And so I think we'll continue to see great data. Intellia will roll out some exciting gene editing data this year, I'm sure, and there'll be other gene therapy data, cell therapy data. So it's fantastic time. I think you do have the overhang of kind of the markets, but good data and great technology will be rewarded. And I think we're still seeing that consistently over the last decade, regardless of what's happening in the external environment.
Kim, Philip, any comments on what you guys think will be most disruptive in the upcoming year?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a number of technologies all coming together at the right time. So if you look at the medical device technologies, early on, if you put a medical device under the skin or in the body, it would typically fibrose. And so we've learned how, through years of research, how to create a device that can incorporate with tissue from the body, become a part of the body, and form that organ-like environment. So that's one part. The other part I think is important is all of the work that's gone on into the differentiation protocols to be able to take a starting stem cell and make that, for us anyway, into a fully differentiated islet that acts just like a human islet. So that is another key part of the technology. And the last part that is really advancing right now is how do you protect these cells from immune system attack long-term without using the anti-rejection medications? And that's really the next technology that is going to be advanced, and Cernova's far into working on that and moving that forward too. So it's really bringing things together, and then out of that you have a platform technology for which you can treat multiple diseases and get that functional cure that we're all looking for.
Yep. Kim, allogeneic cell therapies have obviously been very disruptive and have been in the media fairly significantly in the past year. Do you think these therapies will overcome autologous cell therapies, and will they provide a more efficient solution to autologous cell therapies? Or do you think there's a place for both?
Yeah, I think there's a place for both. Certainly there's been a bit of a rocky start with some allogeneic cell therapies of the first generation, where the durability response is not there. But as things always go, there's iterations. There's work going on now to engineer around that. So I think eventually, some of these durability response issues will be worked through. But with that said, I think there is always going to be a role for autologous cell therapies because, maybe I'm too old school, but I still think about, bone marrow transplant and haploidentical stem cell transplant, 80 years in now. There's room for both of those modalities, and there'll be room for other modalities going forward in the future as well, because it comes down to what works, right? And then the evidence and the data will speak for themselves more than, there's one platform to rule them all. I think it'll really depend on the indication. It'll depend on the patient population, and then also the cell type. I think we're all waiting to see some late stage NK cell data come out, which will be, I think, a great aha for the field. And then I think we'll see the next generation allocars on a T-cell platform and potentially some IPS as well in the coming years. So I'm excited for both to go forward, and I think there'll continue to be innovation on both platforms.
Great points. Obviously, vector technology has also been in the news. A lot more companies scaling up non-viral delivery methods. Devyn, where do you think the industry stands in non-viral delivery methods? Do you think eventually they'll replace viral delivery methods, or again, like autologous versus allogeneic, there's a place for both?
So, I think if we start in the liver, for example, I think that it's probably safe to argue that non-viral approaches are probably going to dominate in any therapy delivered to the liver at this point. I think it's been demonstrated time and again, the LNPs are very safe. You can redose. There's a lot of flexibility there. Outside the liver, I think you've got AAV, you've got the next generation capsids that are being developed are very good. And so I think there it's going to be a mix of, depending on what you want to do and where you're trying to hit. Some places you may want to deliver RNA via non-viral. Others you may want to deliver DNA. So I think it really is going to become a little more therapeutic specific. But today, the non-viral approaches for delivery outside the liver, it's still early days. There's a lot of companies, a lot of smart people working on it. I think they'll get there. But for us as a company, we're utilizing LNP for delivery to the liver, and then for CNS, we're utilizing AAV today because that's the approach that is work. It's proven in multiple therapeutics, and we continue to watch the non-viral space outside of liver. It'll get there at some point. But I think there's room for multiple approaches, as there usually is.
And obviously, all of this innovation requires, a healthy public marketplace, funding and those types of things. Obviously, as everybody's aware, that the markets have affected innovation and these new trends and technologies. Phil, what is your perspective this year in terms of how the markets are affecting innovation, and how will they affect it going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. We all lived through a tough year last year. What I've seen so far is that it's causing the industry to sort of push itself. And by what I mean by that is that from a business standpoint, I think we're becoming a little bit more disciplined and thoughtful about what moves forward, what doesn't move forward. I think it's also pushed us to really be focused on the types of innovation we're looking at. So you see innovation in manufacturing to reduce the COGS associated with manufacturing. You see innovation in autologous therapies to manufacture them quicker, to get them hopefully to patients quicker. A good example is, T-Charge platform that you see coming out. You also see innovation within AAV vectors to make more tissue specific. And then the non-viral space, where some of the innovation that's totally blown my mind is different delivery mechanisms to get things into cells, like an organization like Squeeze, which is actually squeezing the cells to get things in there. So I think the innovation's been really focused on helping us address immediate needs to get better clinical data, because I think that's what everybody needs to be focused on, is getting better clinical data.
Kim, Devyn, what do you, from a developer perspective, what is your strategy in the near term, given what the markets are?
Yeah, I think the strategy is keep your head down and get the clinical data, no matter what. I think, like Phil says, there's definitely a little bit more questioning about whether to try really edgy things or to add more novelty these days. Because the drive really is to stay disciplined and to maybe go back to where the field was 10 years ago, which is sort of bootstrapped it until you got that first clinical data, and then hopefully more good things would come after that. But to stay hyper focused and just to make sure that you have the clinical readouts coming and at a good pace, as well as that you can justify all the spending that you're planning on doing in relation to those readouts. But with that said, there's still I think there's still room and appetite for innovation. It may just take a slightly different form. For example, have had a lot of support innovating around computerized systems and efficiencies there, and using the cloud and things like that. So I think there's still a lot of room to stretch and innovate. It just may not be in the obvious places where it used to be. So that doesn't mean that you should necessarily build an $80 million manufacturing in-house kind of thing anymore. But there's still other ways to advance the field that are very cost effective. Yeah.
Devyn, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say we're it's, as I think Kim rightly noted, it's about focus and it's about execution. And it's clear right now that the public markets, particularly, we're not public, but private markets as well, the value is in clinical milestones, being able to demonstrate that your therapeutic provides meaningful benefit to patients. So for us as a non-clinical company, it means what's the right approach to focus and get to that milestone as quickly as possible. And so, that's what we continue to do. I think at the same time, there's, I think opportunity in this current market to think about creatively, as Kim said, to think about, are there things that we're doing that we cannot do, but perhaps may be better working with someone else to do together? And I think there is opportunity to do more of that in this environment where there's lots of pieces of innovation across all the companies that alone may not be significant value, but put together may be valuable. So I think there's an opportunity to be more creative as well, because we can't do everything that we would like to do. So is there ways to do that with others?
I have seen the markets actually accelerate collaboration for many companies. Companies are, I think, focus is a great word. I think they're more hyper-focused on what their innovation is and collaborating with other thought leaders on what their innovation is rather than trying to do it all. And I think that's going to be good for the community moving forward. I think just collaboration between really smart people will lead to really good things. So, Robin and Philip, would love to get your perspective from the EU. Is the strategy the same no matter what geography you are in, or is there any nuances in the EU that are different than the US? Well,
Orchard is a European company, and we got our first approval in the EU. Some of the discussions also in the earlier panel were all about how the FDA was maybe more receptive and innovative, but we see, in fact, the opposite. We have had our approval in the EU, and we've launched in the EU. So what we do see, though, is that there is a greater focus on actually delivering all the way to the end. Because if we talk about innovation, it's innovation in the clinic, in the lab, but it's also innovation on how we get paid for these products, how we think about market access, how we think about payment models, how we find patients, optimizing the diagnostic pathway, especially for gene therapy, especially for some of the diseases that we are focused on, finding these patients in time. And I think my colleague from Novartis made the same point about SMA patients. Finding them in time is critical to really deliver the promise of this therapy. So really innovating in all of these areas, optimizing a diagnostic pathway, finding a way to get paid for the drugs, be innovative around the payment models, pay for performance, risk share. I think those are all important. But it starts with really being focused on the unmet medical need. And if you're addressing an unmet medical need, the system will ultimately align itself with you to create a solution. And that's what we see across the world, whether it's Europe or US.
Philip, would love to get your thoughts on what the strategy in the EU is as well.
Yep. So essentially what we did is really focus on, as everyone else said, on the clinical development and on our primary program. And the other thing we did is figured out how to speed up patient enrollment going forward. So we were able to get our clinical study moving forward. It enrolled much faster. And that also enabled us to focus on getting a collaborator, which was our Evotec deal done. And with that positive data, we were able to get that done much more quickly and advance into the iPSC technology, which is now taking us forward much more quickly.
Thanks, Philip. Turning over to manufacturing, obviously manufacturing is has been a continued bottleneck for cell and gene therapies. We need more efficient, innovative manufacturing. And obviously the markets have shifted manufacturing strategies for many companies. Kim, what has been Affini-T's manufacturing strategy, and how are you addressing any potential bottlenecks in your technical operations?
Sure. So, in terms of our manufacturing, in many ways, I think we're still hyper focused on the cell quality, before anything else. Especially going into phase 1 trials, really spending a lot of time on analytics and deep characterization, really understanding the product, and the effect of different unit operations and different levers on the product phenotype and quality itself. With that said, being in phase 1 right now, it's about reproducibility, not failing batches, just making sure it's a very robust, closed process. Not necessarily looking towards automation right now. I think there's a time and a place for that, but early on to control what you can't control, which we view to be disseminated unit operations that are just very robust, that have withstood the test of time, and that are workhorses, and string them together and keep it closed, and really want to keep the specialness to minimum, so that we can really focus on the product and the product attribute, and not worry too much about this tubing or that tubing or this device or that device. Sure. But some really to focus on simplicity and reproducibility, and of course product quality above all.
And obviously the internal versus external debate has been always a hot topic, and previously it seemed like everybody was scaling up internally. And now it feels like that scale has shifted back to CDMOs. Devyn, do you agree with that, or do you think do you think it'll shift back once the market's clear, or do you think that there's more capable capacity out there now?
I'll give my opinion. I think it was a mistake for all the companies out there to spend all that capital on building their own manufacturing facility. And I think you now see all those facilities are now up for sale and being picked up by various entities trying to roll them into things or do something with them. And, I think it's unfortunate that, the whole situation occurred. There certainly was rationale at the time for it, and, there may well be today. I think from our perspective, being very thoughtful about capital, because the capital intensiveness of just building the facility is one step. You then have to maintain and keep it going, and it's miserable. It is hard work. And unless you have a product like, say Orchard does, it's actually on the market, I'm not sure it's justified the investment for a phase 1 program. That's just my own opinion. So for us, from our perspective, finding the right CDMOs, and CDMOs are not perfect, I think, but at the same time, if you find the right partner who's done it enough, who you can trust the people and what they're doing, and be able to have person and plant, whatever you need to do to make it as close as possible to your own people, then it can be done. But I don't think we'll be seeing massive build-outs of everyone building their own manufacturing facility at phase 1 anytime soon again. I think the capital's not there, and it's going to be a while before we see that happen again.
Robin, what's been Orchard's approach to manufacturing, both short-term, long-term, obviously with a commercially
Yeah, I was just going to react to what Devyn said, because at Orchard we did go down the route initially as well of building out our own capabilities, but you know, we've backtracked from that, and even with a product on the market today for us, it is a choice to work with a CDMO. We do build up our own capabilities, our own teams in-house, so it's more of a hybrid form, but we're not in the business of putting down concrete and building a facility ourselves. It also has to do with the size of the indication. If you look at the current therapies that we're focused on, these are very small populations, so it doesn't warrant you know, in-house manufacturing yet. We work with a great CDMO that has global capabilities, specialized in HSC gene therapy, both in the preclinical, clinical, and the commercial stage. So for now, we're fine with working with a CDMO.
And Philip, would love to hear your perspective as well, because you have such a unique, first-of-a-kind platform. How do you tackle manufacturing? Is there capable capacity for such a unique platform?
Yeah, so what Cernova did is we took responsibility for the GMP manufacturing of the device and also the implantation materials for the device. And this is actually being done by a contract manufacturer in the US. So we're able to make hundreds of thousands of devices as required. And then what we did on the cell therapy side is that Evotec is taking responsibility for both manufacturing the materials for our clinical trial and also for commercial manufacturing. So what they ended up doing is purchasing a facility that is expert in iPSC, cell technology, GMP manufacturing, and that is working out really well for us. So we've kind of separated the responsibilities on that one.
That's fantastic. I want to shift over to our last topic. We have only a few more minutes about pricing, value, and reimbursement. And while innovative pricing and reimbursement models may seem presentable on paper, once we get into the details, they're often unfeasible or can't be implemented to the same degree across all payer types. Phil, I'd like to start with the first question. How do you see pricing and the reimbursement landscape evolving this year, especially with all the new approvals on the horizon?
Yeah, I think it's going to be evolving somewhat. So if you look historically on the products that have been on the market, Zolgensma, Lemebel, I can never...
Livmeldy,
Even
you
though
got
I
it.
wrote the model, I can't pronounce it.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you look at the ones that are coming out, a lot of them have been approved for reimbursement with the idea that they are cost effective, which they are. And even in the US, with our fragmented payer system, payers were fine paying for that one time or maybe twice therapy based on the cost effectiveness. As we start moving into more prevalent diseases, which will be coming as we start seeing the number of gene therapies, especially on the market, I think the conversation is going to shift slightly to be cost effectiveness and affordability. And we're starting to see that already. In the US, we're starting to see what are called carve-outs. So gene therapy carve-outs, where an employer or insurance company can carve out all the members for like 99 cents to a third party that will then manage the approval of that gene therapy. We don't know how that's going to go, but they're trying to shift the risk. We've seen it in Germany with some of the time-sensitive approvals where we'll approve it for this price, we'll come back after we have more real-world evidence, and then readdress that pricing negotiation. And so you see the movement of, I think you're going to have to be cost-effective and demonstrate it, but people are starting to get a little bit worried about, is it affordable, and you'll have to show how to make it affordable.
Devyn, do you agree? What are your thoughts here?
So I think, so if I put my arm hat on for a second, I think that this is, you know, one of the most important areas for us as an industry is to figure out, to work together to help figure this out, because it's not something a single company is within our space is going to solve. And particularly as we move to larger patient number indications, as just the sheer volume of these increases, payers are not going to be excited about, having 55 different products all costing $1 million or more for, thousands of their patients. And so how do we, as an industry, work together to figure out ways to move this forward? Because it's messy in the U.S. for different reasons than it is in, say, single-payer systems where there's different challenges. But in either case, we've got to figure out an approach forward because we need to get these therapies to patients. I think the other innovation that's got to occur is we've got to drive the cost of goods down. And again, from an industry perspective, it's difficult for one company to invest to do all the novel innovations to drive cost of, say, AV or cell therapy down to levels that are akin to antibodies, or just a little bit above antibodies. But as an industry, there's opportunities for either CDMOs or the industry groups to think about how do we work together to solve this, because it's going to require innovation across the entire space. And I think until we do that, it's going to be very difficult. And so I think there's those two pieces of work that entities like ARM and other entities can help the industry do.
Philip, would love your thoughts here as well.
I think for us, we have a very unique situation because for type 1 diabetes, the issue is not really the cost of insulin, but it's the cost of all of the side effects of the disease. And what we're finding with our therapy is that if we can control blood sugar levels really tightly, then all the side effects, such as blindness, amputations, and these kinds of things all start to, reduce. And so the costs going forward are much, much lower for the healthcare system. And in order to be able to get financing, we had to kind of work this through and have talked to payers very, very early on. And we're seeing that the payers, when they get an understanding of the long-term benefits of treating type 1 diabetes, how great that is, then their understanding of what those costs are going to be and are willing to pay for that. But it is a matter of, it's been talked about this morning that payers are used to just paying on a constant basis as opposed to a one-time approach or once every 5 years or whatever that's going to be. And I think we just need to really start working all together on changing the metrics of how payers are thinking about the potential for a curative disease.
Thank you, Philip.
If I can react
yeah,
to
please.
Because just sharing some of our experience in Europe with creating access for Libmeldi, these were exactly the discussions that we had. So people look at that upfront price tag, but if you are able to move the discussion to say, okay, this is likely to have a durable effect of let's say over 10 years, 20 years, and some of the payers we worked with were ready to take that point of view. You could even argue that this is going to be a cost saving for the system compared to, let's say, the traditional way of attacking these lysosomal storage disorders, which is enzyme replacement, which every year costs hundreds of thousands. So I think shifting the paradigm, I think, is going to be part of the solution here. And with Libmeldi, we have been able to do that in a number of cases in Europe, at least.
That's great. We're close to running out of time. I want to ask one final question. What are each one of you excited about for your respective company or the sector in the upcoming year? I mean, I'll start, and I touched on this earlier, just collaboration. I think the markets and everything that's going on in the industry has really pushed collaboration forward, and I'm really excited about that. I think us focusing on our innovation and not worrying about everything and not having to be innovative in all different areas, but really focusing on our innovation will help us get these patients, and collaborating with others that are also being innovative will help us shorten that speed to market for many of these therapies that the patients desperately need. So I'm really excited about the collaborations that are upcoming this year and the collaborations that are going to happen in the future. But Phil, I'll ask you that question as well. What are you excited about in the upcoming year?
I'm excited about any technology or automation that can reduce the cost of goods, of producing a cell or gene therapy, because we're not going to overcome the pricing issue without doing that, and we're going to be stuck totally in rare disease, and not move to more prevalent diseases where we can truly change society.
Robin?
I'm excited about sort of finally cracking the whole equation from end to end. So, proving the science in the clinic, clearing the regulatory hurdle, clearing the reimbursement hurdle, and now finally also working on newborn screening to find these patients in time. And all of these pieces are now coming together, and I think this is really unlocking the potential of gene therapy, and I'm hopeful that this can now be translated to other and larger indications.
Kim?
Yeah, a couple of things for this year I'm really looking forward to. One of them is supply chain seems to be normalizing from COVID overhang, which is great. And the second, I think, is a lot of great innovation in data analytics is coming, and computerized systems that will just make it a lot easier to analyze very large data sets in real time, which is invaluable for product development and back translation. So looking forward to AI and a lot of the large data set analytics to really be very user friendly and more accessible this year.
Devyn, what are you excited about?
Two things. I think one, from our company perspective, being able to drive our putative therapies towards the clinic as quickly as possible this year will be a big milestone towards that. I think broadly I love seeing all the clinical data coming out that we're changing and making a difference in patients' lives, because that's why we do this, right? That's why all of us are here, and we're making a difference as an industry. It's saving lives, changing lives, and that's what's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think we're all going to look back at this time, for all of us, and really look fondly upon the work that we all did to really set up the therapeutic revolution of the future. And once more and more people find out about what's happening and more of these therapies get approved, it's truly going to be game changing. So, Philip, what are you excited about?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really getting to the point where we can develop a commercializable product that can truly be given to millions of patients. And with our Evotec technology, it's really around the manufacturing of those cells. And what I think is really important for us is that we've been able to figure out how to cryopreserve the fully differentiated cells that can then be distributed around the world and given to patients. And I think this is one of the biggest hurdles in the cell therapy area is how do you get control over those in time and space. So I'm really excited about getting those iPSC cells into patients through clinical trials and really developing a product that can be used for millions of patients. And I think when that starts to happen, the world is really going to change from, you're starting to move from the struggle that we all have with disruptive technologies to bringing technologies that are just going to be commonplace in the world. And then I think you're going to see the cell therapy technologies just take over really rapidly.
So. Yeah, I think going from rare to prevalent conditions is something that is going to be a major milestone for the industry, and getting that approval across the board is something we're all looking forward to. So thank you guys for all of your vision and your thoughts, and thank you for the work that you're doing for the patients, right? Again, like Devyn, you pointed out, that's why we're doing all of this, and thank you, Arm, for hosting this discussion where we can collaborate and we can learn and share our experiences and hopefully make a difference in those patients' lives. So thank you very much, everybody.